Good evening, everyone. This is April Tribe Giauque, and we're here tonight with Myra Gerst. And the exciting thing about tonight is our Beacon of Light, our Domestic Violence Awareness and Action Conference that we call Unite in Light. This Unite in Light, this is our second evening of it. We started on the 1st of October. Now we have the 7th October, and we'll be going through another 4 evenings throughout the month, spread out so that people can come in and join us. Tonight's exciting information is all going to be about prevention and how we address the prevention about domestic violence. We have heard about red flags. We listened to a wonderful contributor and author yesterday about how she left and her story and what happened in that way, that we could see prevention was not anywhere near her story. So tonight's prevention stories and information are going to be here for everyone in the community, any educators, any parents who are out there. So please come, share with us your information, tell us where you're from, and let's get this conversation going. Again, my name is April Tribe Giauque, and I am broadcasting from Kyle, Texas. And my guest, Myra, where are you broadcasting from tonight?
I am in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Excellent. So we've got ourselves a little span across the states here. So it looks like we've got some people popping up live. Welcome. Enjoy this. And we are so excited. And please comment and share. That helps us in our communication and interaction with you to know what it is that you want to understand and need support with. That's why we're here. So, Myra, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and your involvement in a wonderful organization that supported me as I escaped domestic violence called Safe Harbor. So, Myra, take it away.
Thank you, April. My name is Myra, and I am, as April mentioned, the prevention advocate at Safe Harbor. I've only been with Safe Harbor for almost 4 months now, so it is a new job for me. My background is in public health. I graduated from the University of Kentucky. And during my time in college, I did experience abuse in a relationship. So this topic is very near and dear to my heart. It was always something that I wanted to do something about after I left the relationship. I wanted to help other women who are also experiencing it. So I feel really lucky that I'm in the position I am in today and that I get to do that. So a lot of what I do at Safe Harbor, I'm not necessarily working directly with clients and survivors, but I am working with the community and trying to bring education and resources and tools to all different types of audiences or circles of community within Davis County, where Safe Harbor is located. So I'm going to get a little bit into what prevention is and the different types that, different strategies that we use that are effective in teaching prevention. But I'm really excited. April and I will be sharing a little bit about a project we've been working on together later on in this webinar. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, April.
You are welcome. You're welcome. It's so exciting. It looks like we have a few people here. Thank you, Terry. Awesome. Yes, that's true. When we are able to raise healthy boys, we don't have to repair broken men. Excellent. Terry, I hope you stay with us through this broadcast and bring some more of your friends on, because that's the attitude situation. And I mean, that's what starts to change communities. Because Terry, I know within your own leadership, with your business, with all the things that you do over in Indiana, you have quite an influence there. And it's not necessarily directly related to domestic violence, but your action within the community can change so much with domestic violence, because as we are helping and watching each other, this is part of the prevention. So, Myra, do you want to address some of the things as a community that we can do to help with prevention?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking at prevention, it's not, one size fits all. And something else to know is that it is a marathon. It is not a race. Prevention takes a long time. And especially when we're looking at populations over the years, when we're looking at young boys, and we might not see the effect of that prevention until they are, young adults or their fathers. So when we're thinking about prevention, we're looking at the individual level. So, changing any norms or stereotypes or ideas or values that an individual has regarding abuse and violence. And then we're also looking at the relationships. So the relationships that you have with your peers, with your parents, with your friends. How do you talk to them about violence or healthy relationships? And then we're looking at the community. So how does our community react to domestic violence? How do we react to, again, social norms? And social norms, I'm going to continue saying it because it is something that's very important when we're looking at prevention and changing the way that we think about violence and abuse. And then the last is societal. So again, societal is playing into all of those levels. But if we're working on the societal level, we're looking at our country, we're looking at our world, and what is the norm? What do we think about? And we can discuss rape myths and victim blaming, all of these things that play into the increase of violence or allowing violence to continue to happen. So that's kind of, we're looking at 4 different levels. It's not just one size fits all. There are many different aspects to prevention. So
just like with Kathy, what she says that she loves how this is a necessary conversation. Now, Kathy herself, she is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And within those realms, we see, multiple things happen within domestic violence. And sometimes that is sexual abuse as well as childhood abuse. So there's so many levels of this that opening the conversation to things that are tough, things that we want to keep closed and hidden in the dark. When we open it up like this, we really want to have people continue to join with us. And Terry, again, it's so true. Boundaries, guardrails, they are necessary for helping to raise healthy children. Okay, so Myra, you first talked about a little bit about the community. So how within the community can we approach this?
Right. So within the community, we're really looking at education. I think that's a huge one. So are we going into the schools and teaching healthy relationships? And if so, what kind of partnerships are you having with the school? Sometimes schools aren't very receptive to this information because a lot of the time they equate healthy relationships and sex education. And I know that can be a bit controversial. But other things that the community members can do is obviously, when we're looking at policies, that plays a huge role in the way that our law enforcement works. And that is a huge issue when it comes to domestic violence. So understanding what policies are in place and also what the laws are around things like consent or marital rape. These are all really important things that most people don't think about. But, if there is a law or a policy about something that you don't agree with, then that's when we as a community can come together to try and change that. We also have, key leaders within our community. So, again, looking at the schools and principals and teachers, and then also business leaders. Or people who serve on any boards that are happening within the community. Really, it takes a village, and it is so important that we start having the conversation. That's really the first step, to identify what the problem is within the community and then work together towards trying to find a solution or creating effective prevention programs within the community.
So some of those effective programs that we are understanding more and more about, if we go to the key leadership, it's like anything. As leaders, when they have those positive role models, positive influences within the community, you want to keep that positivity going. And when we see something negative, when we see something difficult, challenging, that's something that we need to approach with. Now, I kind of say this, and I've said this through this first 2 weeks of everything happening, is that, guys, they're amazing. Guys to guys, I call it the male magic. They have this understanding with the peer structure of things. And as a positive leader, there's something about wanting to rise up to that and, anchor yourself towards a level like that. So when we have that positivity going throughout the community, in businesses, in leadership, in even, I'll say, in sports, in athletics, maybe in churches, other religious situations, scouting, whatever it is, if we've got positivity and leadership within that, we can watch the boys rise. And that's the point of what we're going to be discussing later at the end. We have a whole program and resource hub for this understanding that for boys to become the men of the world that we want, this understanding, this prevention, how they treat other people in the relationships is key. So it's not just sectioned off, even though we've kind of given it little areas to understand. You have healthy relationships within good leadership, then that can transpose into healthy relationships between friends and friends. And then as youth and young adults start to date, that can be another healthy relationship if we have given them the opportunity within the community, if they don't have it within their family, what that positivity looks like. And that's really going to be a huge support. So speaking about the healthy relationships, how can we develop and grow those within family, within community? What part of the education, how do we approach that?
Right. So I think something really important to note is that healthy relationships is not something that we should be teaching once you're in an intimate partnership. Healthy relationships, like April was saying, it starts in the home and it starts young. So I don't think that we're ever too young to start learning about healthy relationships. So, even with a toddler and when we're teaching about body safety. So this is something that I've read a lot about and I think is really beneficial to teach to young kids is that, a lot of the times we tell our child, oh, go hug and kiss your grandmother. Go give her a hug and kiss. But that child doesn't necessarily want to do that. So we're teaching at a very young age that you have to hug and kiss your grandmother, even if you don't feel comfortable doing that. And it might seem a little far-fetched, but these are the ideas that we're implanting very, very young. So it's things like this, setting boundaries. That's a huge one with healthy relationships. A lot of the time, people don't understand their own boundaries that they have with themselves. And not only do they not necessarily know their own boundaries, but then they have a hard time communicating those boundaries. So identifying the boundary and then being able to communicate the boundary are the key steps in, creating healthy relationships. Also, just communication in general. So when we're looking at the home and we're looking at what parents can do is communicate with their child in an effective way rather than accusing a child of perhaps, having a boyfriend when they don't, when they haven't shared that information. You kind of need to approach it in a way that you're not accusing them of something, that this is a comfortable conversation. I'm asking you because I care, because I want you to be safe. So the foundation, again, of a healthy relationship starts young. And then as we get older, things get more complicated, right? You get into a relationship later on in your early adulthood, and now you're potentially sharing a home with someone. You're potentially sharing the bills with someone. And I know that April has talked about this before. Abuse is not just physical. We're looking at emotions. We're looking at finances. So do you have good financial fundamentals for yourself? How is your own personal emotional well-being? It starts with yourself and building that confidence. So again, another thing with healthy relationships is building confidence within yourself and having a solid, healthy foundation with yourself. We always hear the cliche, you can't love anyone else until you love yourself. And I really do believe that to be true. Of course, your love can be enhanced by someone else. You can learn to love yourself more through a relationship, but the foundation of caring for and respecting yourself has to be there. So again, we're looking at boundaries, communication, and then we're also looking about consent. So I like to teach boundaries and consent kind of simultaneously, just because, again, a lot of the time people shy away from the word consent because they think that we're only talking about sexual consent. But consent is in every day of our life. And the way that we can normalize consent and make it easier for someone to say yes or someone to say no is to talk about it in an everyday context. So
I love how you bring that right into the everyday context. And so what Kathy, she's really, really a huge advocate of the consent and teaching boundaries, because when you know those things and when you can accept, she also, what you were talking about earlier as the child, go and hug, go and, kiss whatever relative and that kind of thing. When we are showing that example, we are then teaching them, you're feeling this way. You don't need to worry about that. Don't think about how you're feeling. If you're comfortable, not comfortable, I want you to do this, therefore go do it. And it sounds, like you said, a little bit strange where people say, no, you go and love and hug your relatives because that's respect, that's love, that's showing those things. If anytime anyone's uncomfortable, that's it. You can still be civil. You can say kind words, but it's the touch. You can have the hands off, and that consent, really, really important. Looks like we've got a lot of people commenting on all of these things. I mean, so much, we're covered up. This is fantastic. So there's so many things that when we are looking at the consent in the everyday conversation, I think that's just awareness. I loved how you said, when we hear the word consent, we've just related it directly just to sexual consent and that kind of thing. No, it's every day. Do I have permission to ask you to help with this thing, do, whatever kind of project? When we're asking people, we're really asking for their permission, which is consent. So that is, really helpful in very, very clear terms. So we've talked a little bit about community, a little bit about the healthy relationships. What was our third item that we were going to discuss tonight, Ms. Myra?
So are we talking about bystander intervention? Or are we?
Yes, bystander intervention. Yes.
So bystander intervention is another key component to prevention. So bystander intervention, or upstanding in an intervention sense, is when you see something that could potentially be violent or abusive, and you do something about it. So there's this idea that the bystander effect, which is that when there are many people around and they see something going on, no one's going to do anything about it. So the more people that are witnessing the violence, the less likely it is that someone is going to say something. And that's because we just assume that someone else is going to do it. So we don't take responsibility ourselves. Or perhaps we are afraid of where we have this fear of judgment, that someone's going to judge us by intervening. So when we're looking at bystander intervention, and what we teach about is being direct. So either, you can say something to someone, say, hey, what you're doing is not cool. We need to cut that out. Or you can distract. So distracting is, hey, what time is it? So you're trying to put the focus away from whatever the incident is that is occurring. The next is delegate. So if someone else is around and perhaps, it's become really intense and someone needs to call the police, you say, hey, you call the police. So you're making sure that you make eye contact with them, that they know that that is their job. And then the last thing is following up. So making sure that if you can follow up in the situation with the person who's being abused, just say, hey, are you all right? I'm here for you. Even if it's a stranger, saying, is there anything I can do? Something really important to know about bystander intervention is that your safety is very important. So you don't want to put yourself into a situation where the violence could then be turned towards you. So it really takes your own judgment to assess, do I do a direct approach or am I distracting this situation? And bystander intervention is especially important in college today. So a lot of the time, you see it's the typical college scene where a bunch of people are at a party and they're drinking, and someone sees that their friend has had a little bit too much to drink, and a guy or a girl, whoever it is that is perpetrating the violence, takes them upstairs, and no one does anything about it. Or even worse, people are encouraging that behavior. So that's obviously not bystander intervention. But in that situation, do you have the tools? Do you know what to do? Because I know for myself, before I knew anything about bystander intervention, when I was in high school or early in college, I would have seen something and I knew it was wrong, but I didn't necessarily know what to do about it. So that's what bystander intervention is to teach people and give people clear and concrete tools to use in order to be able to intervene.
Exactly. I've seen, and you've probably all had a similar experience at least at one time at the grocery store where something is happening where, the hair stands up and you know that something's not right. Something is going on. You have a choice. And I'm talking really to our, to everyone, but kind of this male to male idea is very, very helpful. Doesn't mean that you can't, but again, you're assessing your safety. So we've heard that, the voices being raised or the put downs happening, those kinds of things going on. And I love Myra's reminder for us is the distractor. You can, if you're in the aisle and something like that is happening, you can do a distraction. Is this where the soup is? I didn't know. Something that interrupts this confrontation that's happening. Now, if they yell and, get worried and all upset at you, you've at least paused. They have at least paused, and you possibly have given that person an out. So there's things to do. It's a piece of distraction, and like I said, with the peer-to-peer male leadership, those kinds of things, it might be enough that the next time they feel that they want to just unleash, they might look around first before they just start in. And again, that's another pause. Does that save the world? Well, it starts to do the ripple effect a little bit by a little bit, because like how we've gotten into this challenging problem, it's going to take a while to get out, but the prevention is there. It's true. We do have to help and support each other within the community. Myra said it does take a village. We are our neighbor's keeper. The concept idea is civility, kindness, support. If you know something wrong is happening and we just decide not to, that's not okay. So we really need to be a part of how we can be aware, how we can start with the training and help our children within the home, that's ideal. If it's not happening within the home, within schools, within other community opportunities and education, because we all have a chance to be an influence on someone. And so why not have that influence on positivity? Why not? We do have that understanding and power. So Myra, this brings us to another point where we've talked about the relationships, we've talked about bystanders, we've talked about leadership, and there's one more piece of the intervention that we were kind of talking about earlier. And would you like to share about the social norms, those stereotypes, these kinds of things that can help us to shift and be aware so that the conversation can really be impactful?
Right, yeah. So gender stereotypes, believe it or not, they do lead to violence. So things like, you know, in the most cliche and simple of context, boys are strong and girls are weak. So right there off the bat, that's kind of like the epitome of a gender stereotype. And that right there shows that women are weak and that we are vulnerable to violence, rather than we are strong women and we don't take violence. So that's kind of like, I believe, is the cream of the crop of gender stereotyping, but obviously it goes a lot more. So, you know, when we're thinking about rape myths, when we're thinking about, oh, well, she was wearing that skirt that was really short, and she drank too much that night. Or, oh, she was being really flirty, so she was asking for it. These are all gender norms, or even rape myths, if you will. These are stereotypes that allow violence to happen. By saying yes, or by saying it was her fault that she was in that situation because of what she was wearing or the choices she made, takes the blame off of the person perpetrating the violence and onto the victim or survivor. And that's not okay, because at the end of the day, she can wear whatever she wants. It's up to the perpetrator not to perpetrate the violence. So by changing these gender stereotypes and changing these norms, and honestly, it's by bringing awareness to them, bringing awareness to the fact that that's actually not okay, that we're allowing this to happen, and having a conversation about it. I think a lot of the times these stereotypes are so ingrained in our subconscious, and they're not necessarily, we're not aware that we have these beliefs. So again, having conversation and bringing light to them is where we can make a change.
Right. And within that change, I think something that is vital and important is to understand that as we move away from the actual perpetrator, no one wins. We have to always refocus back on, no matter what the situation, no matter, we'll put the whole list out, no matter, someone made a choice to be violent, someone made a choice to be vulgar, somebody made that choice. Well, it wasn't this person here. Yeah, but they provoked, they enticed, still chose right here. The perpetrator still made the decision. And that's the emphasis, that's the point. And I know Jackson Katz, in one of his YouTube videos that I think it's gone viral now, he talks a little bit about this in just a simple way to phrase a sentence, where there's a sentence that John beat Mary. Right at the beginning, we understand what the sentence is all about. He beat her, period. That's what happens. The very next sentence, he says, Mary was beaten by John. Now John's moved all the way to the end of the sentence, just about ready to fall off. Who's the focus? Mary, Mary, poor Mary, poor Mary. It's not that we don't want to help Mary, but the way we help Mary is by focusing on John, to say John was the one doing the abuse. And so it just kind of fits into the whole model, what Myra was talking about, whatever they were wearing, whatever they were drinking, whatever the situation they were in, John, in this case, still ultimately made the choice to act. So that's the part where we want to make awareness for our boys becoming men, that your choices matter, your actions matter, and you are the one responsible. If we continuously excuse, then why would they have any more accountability or responsibility? It's been excused. And that's what's wrong. And that's what helps to perpetrate things even further and deeper, because we have excused them as a society. And again, that's not okay. So parents, I hope many of you are listening, that at home, the whole act of understanding that what your actions caused and you're responsible and accountable for that, the small things, the big things, the everyday things, starts to teach that, wow, what I do matters. What I say matters. It actually can impact someone for good or for negative. And learning those lessons helps us to understand, wait, my fault, my bad, I made that choice. Hopefully, those lessons can be learned way when they're small, when they're little, when little things are happening, so that when they're older and bigger, with whatever event, anger, hurt that they might have, they don't then take it out on someone else. And again, we're talking about, when I describe violence, you can be sliced with words just as if you were sliced with a knife. And I feel that it's worse because in a PTSD moment, when those words are recalled or someone else says them, you actually physically have the same emotional reaction that you did. Now, if somebody physically hurt and just, damaged you, once those heal, it's not quite the same as it is connected with the words. So all of this, and so I don't want anyone to feel that they're excused, like, oh, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Well, I was never actually hit, so I guess this doesn't belong to me. No, it belongs to anyone, any person that defames, destroys, damages someone else. This is for you, and I want you to be aware of that, is that we don't go by a level of, well, that wasn't hard enough, or oops, yeah, you still don't qualify. No, that's not the point. So in our prevention, we want to make sure that we're very clear with the four things that we've talked about tonight. So it looks like we've got great information, people popping up here, defending the perpetrator has to stop. And Kathy's book about, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget the name of it. Broken to Beautifully Whole. Oh, Kathy, please tell me that's the name of your book. I have a brain problem right now. Her book talks so much about that, is that we have to stop defending the person that was causing the abuse and making the excuses, which inadvertently happens when we say she was wearing that, she was drinking too much, and that's the victim blaming. So perfect. Exactly, Kathy. Thank you so much for saying that. Defending the survivor must begin. Correct. And we want to be able to prevent. So women, when we are talking with you, what do you feel helps you to be in the strongest and the best way to defend and prevent things happening to yourself? That's a question that I'm asking everyone out there. I know for me, some of the best things that I learned how to do was to stand up for myself and use my voice. Now, I will say, I'm not one for contention face to face. I usually am very quiet when those acts and things are happening. But I make sure that I make my stand known when I'm calm and can think about things. And I make sure that they know that the boundary was crossed. Again, it might not be into this because safety might be involved, but they will learn. So Myra, when we're working with any kind of victim or survivor who's gone through this, how do we then help them so that they don't fall back into anything that could be damaging or hurting to them again?
Well, I think that, we know this, the statistic that it typically takes a survivor 7 times before she does not go back anymore. So I think, and this is something I really love about Safe Harbor, is that we do look at a holistic approach to allowing the survivor, giving the survivor or helping the survivor get to a place where they have all the tools in order to not go back. I think the biggest thing with this is financial stability, because a lot of the time that is why a survivor continues to go back, is because they are relying on their partner or perpetrator financially. So teaching skills on how to budget and save your own money, I think that's something that we use a lot at Safe Harbor to help people in not going back. Another thing, like April mentioned, is learning to use your voice and stand up for yourself, not necessarily to perpetrate more violence, but to know your own worth. And that's something that I believe, I don't, like I said earlier, I don't work with clients one-on-one, but my own belief is that, we have to build that resiliency and that confidence to know your worth. We also talk about things like healthy parenting skills, and another reason why people stay is because of children. So learning to help your child and safety plan with your child to give them the tools as well. Overall, it's, like I said, it is a holistic approach. There are so many different aspects of why someone continues to stay or why someone goes back. So we have to look at all the pieces of the puzzle.
I love how you look at the whole piece. And we want tonight to be one of those big pieces that aren't really talked a lot about. Unfortunately, prevention, just like anything, if you can prevent things from happening in the first place, how much money would we save? If in the prevention, we wouldn't have to be having 11,000 shelters across the United States. With prevention, we wouldn't have to have all of these loss of jobs. We know that it costs $9.4 billion each year for businesses because of domestic violence. That means the survivor, the victim, is not showing up on time to work. They could be in the hospital. They could be at court. They could be late, chronically missing appointments and then being released. Why? Because their partner was hiding their car keys. As simple as that sounds, many times those are reasons to be fired because they're not arriving on time like they said they would. And the other one has the control, hide their keys. $9.4 billion. So business owners out there, that's a big deal. We know 1 in 4 women are in an abusive situation. Think about that within your employment. How many women do you employ? And just based on those facts, how many then would be in a domestic violence situation? We also know, unfortunately, that every mass shooting that has happened in the United States, and mass shooting qualifies as 4 or more people being shot, all have a connection with domestic violence, whether they were raised in it or they themselves are perpetrators of it. Community-wise, that is so impactful. And in the year 2019 was probably one of our most deadliest events on record for the United States. And all of that stems from a point of domestic violence. So we need to know that this isn't something that's removed. This isn't, oh, well, in my life, in my family, I don't see it, therefore I guess it's okay. We dodged the bullet, we're good. No, this is a community. This is school. This is teachers. These are children. These are youth. These are business owners. These are so many things that are happening within us that all impact and affect us. Again, Myra said it takes a village. And that concept is true because civility conversations all end up in the way that we can truly prevent, which in the end allows all of us to become healthy. So that is something we really wanted to emphasize tonight. And we're so grateful. So many people came, have made fantastic comments. We've got lots of people still commenting that choices have consequences. Exactly. There's just all of that is absolutely true. So Myra, at our last few minutes here, what would you like to say at the end of this conference and broadcast tonight?
I think it's as simple as start having the conversation, whether it's at your dinner table, with your friends, with your family. If you notice something, say something. Even if it's a friend or a family member, call them out if they make a comment that is, again, if it's connected to gender stereotypes or if it's perpetrating violence, call them out on it. And that's a way of bystander intervention. Start teaching your kids about healthy relationships, and the way that you model in your relationship is how they're going to learn. So again, it starts in the house. It starts young. It starts very young, and teach women to love themselves. That is so important. Empower the women around you, empower girls around you. And something else I want to say to end on is that not all men are perpetrators of violence, but most perpetrators are men. So we need to remember that men are, if we want to solve this issue, if we want to prevent, we need engagement from men and boys. This isn't a women's issue. This is everyone's issue.
Exactly. That's well said, because we can't excuse it. And that's part of the unfortunate piece of this, is that when we hear domestic violence, we see usually a piece of sympathy like, oh, that is too bad. And it's a women's issue. I've tuned out. This is a community issue. This is a man's issue. This is all issues. And I love what Myra said. Not all men are perpetrators. However, the majority of perpetrators, unfortunately, are men. So let's get those men-to-men conversations happening. Let's raise those boys so that they can be what I call a protector and provider of someone else, where they know that someone else is more cherished than even themselves, and they will do anything to help and support that. Healthy relationships are vital in all of this. Start young, keep the conversation going, and let's see by next year if we can start to help bring down the numbers. Everyone out there, thank you so much for this evening, and thank you for showing up with your books in hand. And I just have to make one more announcement, is that today another shelter was delivered to in Wisconsin. This is day 5 of day 7 straight days of deliveries to shelters for pinpoints across America. Thank you so much, women who spark Tribe and Group. Lori Chinoski, you and Alita Norris have been amazing, and the women and survivors in Wisconsin have been blessed with more hope, more light, and hopefully life-changing for generations to come. So thank you so much out there. Kathy, Terry, all the people that showed up tonight, thank you for your support. You've been wonderful. Thank you, everybody. We'll see ya.